antibiotics.
Right, that's what it sounds like. But it sounds like it's making a huge difference in a lot of people's lives from what you're talking about.
That's correct.
Yeah. And Dr. Kim, you mentioned earlier that there were numerous natural herbal methods for treating diabetes.
Yeah.
So what are the other methods?
Right now, there are about more than 2,000 herbs and plant-based medicines, drugs that are shown to be effective to control blood glucose. But what I'm saying is, it is not true that all herbal products are safe. All herbal products.
So of these 2,000 herbs you mentioned, they're not all necessarily going to
Yeah,
work
and
for
then
you.
I say 1,900 of them are toxic. So there are very dangerous herbs.
So this is not something to just enter into lightly.
Yeah, for example, some are toxic, even fatal. So, and other herbs, actually most of the diabetic herbs we see on the market in North America, they are anti-diabetic. They lower blood glucose by inducing artificial indigestion, meaning that if people, even if people take food, it doesn't get digested. Therefore, you see lower blood glucose. I think that's not healthy. But anyhow, if you just look at the end result, it lowers blood glucose.
Right.
But it lowers blood glucose at a very high price.
Right, it sounds like it. So Dr. Kim, we're going to talk a little bit more later about some of those natural methods you've referred to. But in the meantime, when we're talking about alternative medications like these, what sort of criteria or standards exist?
Oh, whenever you are approaching this natural treatment or herbal treatment, I think you can use 6 or 7 criteria. Let me just go slowly here.
Sure.
1, the effects should be proven scientifically. A few anecdotes is just not sufficient.
Right. It's got to be more comprehensive.
Yeah,
than
I
that.
saw a person, I met a person who is okay. No, that's not sufficient.
Right.
There should be at least a statistically reliable studies. Okay? And then that study should be compared with the control group. So we should know whether this is just placebo effect.
Right.
So first criteria you should look at is it just anecdotal or the effects are proven scientific?
Right.
Secondly, it should be safe. So if it has toxicity, it has side effects,
Right.
then you should get rid of it from your
So it's
candidate.
measured for all
Yeah.
those categories.
No resistance. So it is also quite wrong to believe that herbal treatments do not develop resistance. It's not true.
So some do.
Some do. Some do. They have to increase those. Some are even more serious than.
And then the pharmaceutical.
That's correct. So that's one criteria. And another criteria is, this is very important. We should know how this works. Otherwise, if we don't know how it works.
You're playing a bit of Russian roulette there, then.
Yeah.
It's a gamble.
Yeah. So we call it modes of action.
Right.
Yeah. So modes of action should be identified. So unless, because all these herbal treatments should be used in conjunction with the traditional pharmaceutical treatment in the beginning.
Right.
Therefore, unless you know how this works, you cannot really combine the traditional treatment and this alternative treatment.
Right.
So
right.
you should know how it works.
Right.
And then also it should be available to everybody. If it is too rare, then we are talking about something which is not available to us. So
What's the point?
what's the point?
Exactly.
And then we should also look at whether its change is fundamental or long term. We should look at that too, because all herbal is treatments, if they are rightly or they are correctly combined or correctly used, they are supposed to bring long-term fundamental changes.
It's not in here for the short cure that you're
Yeah.
talking about long term.
That's correct.
Right.
And then another thing, another criteria we should look is whether it addresses the whole body, whether it not only symptomatic
Right.
treatment is
Sure.
valuable, but all these herbal treatments are supposed to mildly addresses the general health of the whole
Yes.
body. So you should look at that too. So if you look at all these criteria, basically you can select right herbal treatment for you.
Right, so that's good to know. So there are some pretty good guidelines there
That's
for
correct.
selecting herbal
Yeah.
remedies.
So if you apply this old criteria, it is not every day you find the herbal treatment that meets all these 7 criteria.
Right. So Dr. Kim, those are some really helpful guidelines for when we're talking about these alternative medications. But let's go back to P700 for a moment. You said during the break that people that don't have diabetes can take this drug as well. Or, sorry, this drug, it's not. It's a natural remedy.
That's correct.
Say more about that.
For example, myself, I don't have diabetes. My children, they don't have diabetes, but we all take this. The reason is, first, let's talk about pancreas. If we keep our beta cells healthy,
Right.
and then about the insulin resistance, if we keep our insulin resistance upregulated, basically we are preventing diabetes.
Right.
So that's the fundamental mechanism that leads to the diabetes. If we cut those mechanisms before it becomes diabetic, of course we are preventing. Actually, we did quite a bit of study here. We at first made many animals become diabetic. So there's a mechanism that triggers the animal to become diabetic. And then one group, this P700 was given. The other control group was not given. And then that group that was not given this P700, they all became diabetic, while 70% of the animals that were given P700, they didn't become diabetic. Anyhow, all the ingredients are regarded good for your health anyhow. So I take this P700 as a general health promotion, not particularly for diabetes.
So general health
Yes.
and preventative
Yeah, that's correct.
for diabetes.
That's correct.
So fascinating. It's got tons of application here. So Dr. Kim, let's backtrack a little bit. We talked earlier on the show about some of the signs and symptoms of diabetes. Some of the symptoms that I've been reading about, sexual dysfunction, it's a big issue with diabetes.
Especially male sexual dysfunction. 70% of male impotence comes from diabetes. And then when a person is diagnosed as diabetic, 50% of them, I'm talking male
Right.
patient, 50% of them become sexually impotent
Right.
at some point. So when they see doctors to discuss their problems in their sex life, the first question doctor asks is, do you
Are
have
you
diabetes?
diabetic? Right.
That's correct. And then imagine, the male sexual function is basically composed of the 2 aspects. One is nerves, and the other is the blood circulation is in capillaries. In the capillary, blood doesn't get circulated smoothly once you have diabetes. Blood becomes sticky, and capillary become clogged,
Right.
and then nerves are damaged. Of course, you have problems in sexual life. But this P700, people, because of this tremendous effects in the cleansing of these capillaries, and then these nerve damages are restored. Therefore, quite ironically, the restoration of their sexual function is the most frequently heard testimonies.
Right. Well, and I would think, too, that it would probably be more important to be treating diabetes than taking Viagra in this case.
Viagra is dangerous for some people. Viagra is basically the squeezing the capillaries. So
if you're a diabetic, that's not a good combination.
Diabetes people tended to have this coronary disease 400% more likely than ordinary people.
So they're already at risk.
On the top of that, you squeeze your capillaries, arteries. Basically, we are talking about some serious dangers here.
Right. Right. And Dr. Kim, what about fatigue?
Fatigue, chronic fatigue. As I said, for diabetic people, muscles don't get enough nutrition. So muscles are actually lack of nutrition. So they feel constantly fatigued.
Right. So this is going to be people really dragging
And
themselves out of bed in the morning.
They lose muscle mass because they don't get nutrition. Also, as I said, because of this frequent urination and thirst, they tended to wake up during the night a few times.
Right.
You
So they're
don't
not sleeping well.
also whole body aches. The quality of sleep is gone. So they wake up very tired next morning, and then they live a very tired day, another day. So, and then keep on having a poor sleep next day. So this thing continues. So it's
Really,
fatigue.
really
Yeah.
impacts quality of
That's
life in a
correct.
huge
That's correct.
way.
And the good news is the P700, invariably, without exception, people say they just recovered their energies in their life.
So their energy levels dramatically improve as a result of using
dramatically.
P700.
Yeah. So if we know how P700 works, that's very natural conclusion.
So it makes sense from what
Makes
you've
sense.
described.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what's the correlation between diabetes and weight loss or weight gain, I should say?
Do you remember the vicious cycle we just mentioned just a
Yes.
moment ago? Because of that, once you have diabetes, it's almost impossible to control weight.
You've got everything against you.
Yeah. And then if you are obese, it is almost impossible to control diabetes. So I'm quite frustrated when people say when you have diabetes, you should control your weight. It's just
How do you do it?
How do you do it? You're just repeating the question. It's not suggesting a solution.
Right.
So for diabetes people, there are inherent reasons why they find it so difficult to control their weight. So there should be something else except in addition to saying you should control diet. It's just repeating the question.
But what's the impact of P700 on controlling weight?
Actually, when the former president of American Diabetes Association, when he reviewed the studies of this P700, he recommended that, Dr. Kim, you should develop this product as a weight control product rather than diabetes product. Jokingly, he said the market for weight control product is 10 times larger than a diabetes product. But we decided not to because, in order to compete in weight control market, you have to control with all those outrageous claims, something as 10 pounds in 1 week. L-Leotin works very slowly.